It's one of my favorite parts about living in Vegas for so long and getting to be or ride the same frequency of some of the really top high end climbers of the discipline that I respect and don't either know a ton about or have a ton of experience. Is that when we link up for training, it's usually on a board, and it's, you can get in with whatever their off season is, or whenever he's back in town, or whenever Alex is back in town. And it's really cool to see that is like a common denominator for a lot of these higher end pros is the board climbing, is the training, whether it's for power endurance and their 4x4s or whatever. And it's really cool to just ride that wave with them.
Ravioli Biceps. Welcome to the pod, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
Dude, you are the most famous anonymous, pseudo-anonymous person climbing. I just love saying Ravioli Biceps. You don't have any problems with us confusing you of other people. Like, you are the Ravioli Biceps, man. I love it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think some people are like, do I call you Rav or Ravioli or RB? It's like, it's all good. And I'm happy that you didn't say strongest moonboard. That is not what I am. Some people at they're like, oh, he's the strongest moon. It's like, absolutely not. Never was. Prolific maybe.
I don't know if I'd say never was. It's just times have changed, man. Like, I was ripping on you in the pod I did before in a very friendly manner, because you're an incredibly strong moonboarder, board climber. But when you hit the scene, you kind of were the strongest moonboarder, but things have changed, man. The boarding culture has evolved, and now you're just damn good. But now there's kids who are half your age, and they're warming up on everything. Yeah.
All of it. And I love to see it. And it's great. I think even when I started doing it, Jonathan put it really well, because I was like, there's a tons of people that could have done all these benchmarks, even when I was having my benchmark odyssey. But I think he said it really well. He's like, but they didn't do it. Even if they could, they didn't. And I think that's kind of more like, I've never felt like, oh, I was the pinnacle or anything like that. But I think with the amount that I've climbed and hopefully the impact that I've sent out or gotten people psyched to jump on boards, like that's kind of what it's always been about. And it's easier to say as I'm on the decline and watching people like lap and triple lap, but that's exciting. That's awesome. You see what they're doing with board lords and what they're doing on the board. It's hugely inspiring.
One thing you did that is cool is that while you did all the benchmarks in, maybe multiple sets, but let's just go back to 2016, is that then you moved really heavily into setting too. It's almost like the arc of a professional outdoor climber where maybe they repeat some of the classics and then they go out and, make their mark by doing FAs. So that's kind of like a similar thing in the boarding culture, I'd say.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think it's just being in it long enough to realize or to understand or to see these little glimpses of what is cool, or taking something from, I really like this about the board and I want to see how far I can push it on each set. It still excites me.
Well, something that's just interesting when I think back to those early times where you were on your benchmark journey and posting on Instagram, which I think was integral there. I think those are tightly correlated, or tightly related at least, is that between your tattoos, love of metal, and boards being kind of like a strength. I mean, I don't want to say board climbing is not super technical, but there's a lot of swinging around, a lot of burly looking stuff. And there's this kind of, I don't know, either you set the tone or you tapped into some style and culture around board climbing, like this, I don't know, I think you say always underground or something like that. And it almost harkens back to my memories of the schoolroom and cellars and that hardcore training vibe out of the UK and really probably where the seeds of the moonboard originated. Was that something that you tapped into from the beginning? Is that just you being you? But like, there's something there that like you set that tone, and like, I love that about board climbing culture.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you saying it. And I didn't really realize it right off the bat, but in those first videos that I was posting, it's at a gym called Red Rock Climbing Center in Vegas, and they put a moonboard in the attic. like the true addict, like I don't know if I'm putting them on blast with the fire code or whatever. Like, don't go investigate. But they used to have this top zone. It's kind of like a haunted house gym where it's this circular spiral. And then you get to the top, and it used to be the spot for birthday parties or pizza parties or whatever for kids. And then they kind of built it out where there was a little section where you could do core or some lifting, some general, just very, very basic, bare bones stuff. And then at the far side, they put a moon board. It's right next to this concrete wall. If you see those early videos, there's like a concrete wall. If you kind of kick over on a K finish, you're hitting that wall, and it's kind of got this dungeon feel, even though it's just in an attic. And those sessions started to remind me of where I started to climb in Chicago. A place called Hidden Peak was like underneath a gymnastics gym. And so you used to walk in and there'd be all these gymnastic moms and dads, and then their kids are like doing gymnastics and stuff, like you have the gymnastics background. And, the climbers like look different. I was in, early college at the time, and they're kind of looking at you like, you're not here to do gymnastics. You definitely can't afford it, and we're going to just push you to this like little underground spot. And it was truly in the basement. Tons of strong climbers came out of there, but we would have a 40. I think it was like 40-ish, between 40 and 45. And we would just make stuff up, session, make stuff up. And it's crazy because the crag, the home crag for Chicago, is like the Red River Gorge, right? People are just like going nuts and doing the 7-hour or whatever drive. I'm sure people are still doing
7 hours?
it.
Woo.
It was crazy. And at the time I was, into climbing, had a good friend group and things like that. But we would go Friday after work and just all pile in, drive down, get to the Red at like 2 a.m, put up a tent, and then, climb all weekend, come back. I can't imagine doing it now. I just can't imagine, but we were so psyched. But they would do these long, I don't know, power endurance or endurance, put little numbers on all the holds. Like this is hold A, 11A, 11B, the bump and things like that. But I always really loved just that 40, 45 straight angle. I wanted to just do hard moves. I wanted to do like hard stuff, try a move 50 times. I wasn't as interested in doing the big, long circuits. I just was always kind of drawn to that movement.
How did it transfer over to the Red? Because the Red is known for, I've actually never been, but it's supposed to be kind of very endurance-y, very consistent. And someone would tell me, they said something like, at the Red, the holds are all the same on every climb, and 512 looks like this, 513 looks like this, and 513 looks like this. I'm just, saying steeper, but all very similar. Yeah. Sounds amazing, but I'm curious, like, did it work doing laps in the basement?
It didn't work for me, but it worked for a lot of those strong climbers, and I loved the feel. I was so new to climbing. So you're a sponge. You're trying to get every single thing. You're watching all the videos, all the dosages back then and all that stuff, and seeing these far away places. But the Red was where we could go outside and climb. And it was, you go with the group and you hang out at the crag and you do whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I was always kind of drawn to the stuff where it was a boulder problem to arrest, There's a climb down there called Tuscan Raider, I think, which is like, I don't know. It's like a V5 to a giant crater that you can just hang out in. So I was like, I'll do that. I was like, I'm into that one. I want to do like the hard moves on the rope and then have a huge rest. So when I left Chicago and I moved to Vegas, I'd already known, I want a boulder. I want to go to Bishop. I want to go to Waco. I want to do all these things. And being set up in Vegas was great too. Obviously you have Red Rock right there. And I pursued the bouldering and that movement, just kind of left sport climbing behind.
First of all, I love the idea of driving 7 hours on Friday night and then coming back on Sunday night. I did that in San Francisco to Bishop, and we would just, drive literally 7 hours. And then you come home so late on Sunday and you have to work the next day. And I just remember sometimes I would be setting on, like, Mondays were the days I would set, and I'd be with my buddies who were setters, and like they'd drop you off at 2 or 3 in the morning and you'd look at each other and just like, all right, I'll see you in like 4 hours. Like, we're just coming in. Monday was always just totally dragging ass. So love that dedication. This is why I also like board climbing, is because we could stop right now and be board climbing within like 3 minutes, have an amazing session, and just be back before this podcast was even done. That's board climbing.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we're gonna chat for a couple hours, and it's rare that I have a board session that's longer than 2 hours or a climbing session that's longer than 2 hours. I'm sure it's the same for you, just constraints on life and whatever it might be. But that I think is a huge part of it, right? And I kind of I forget who I was talking to, but I was describing you have this funnel of climbing and whatever rock climbing is, whatever that is to someone when they get into it. And then it's like, okay, there's all these different, we talked about sport climbing, bouldering, you kind of get your specialty and that filters it out a little bit, but it's still broad. And then you get into, okay, indoor bouldering. Oh yeah, just pretty much indoor boulder. And then it just distills further and further to, oh, now I'm on boards. Now I'm at this place. And I feel like it's just this progression of, I want to get the most out of my session and have some moves that are really engaging all the way through versus maybe you warm up on the commercial sets and they're not as engaging all the way through. And I don't mean engaging like mentally or like creatively. I think setters do a great job, but I'm talking about like your body being engaged for like that amount of time while you're on the board is like a maximizing effect.
So, I mean, I'm right there with you. Literally have a board in my garage. But my only pushback on that in today's world is that if you grow up and you just head straight to the boards and you're like, this is me, or head straight to, I don't know, whatever the discipline is, I really encourage people to go sport climbing, go outdoors. And, here in your past, you were at the Red. And I didn't know that. I mean, I know you not just as a board climber, but as a very strong boulderer, whatever that means, outdoors, every different location in the world. And, I think it's important to make sure that you've exposed yourself to the different disciplines so that when you do drill down, it's because you love it,
I have a note for later, like here on my note cards. That's like, yeah, I kind of want to get into it now, but you nailed it. I'll save it for later about the path and the progression. I know you at the opening on your podcast say you've been climbing for 30 years. That's your intro. That's your longevity is, hey, that's a huge part of your identity is you've been climbing that long. I'm like at 20 and it's sometimes hard in like preparing for this podcast. It's hard to think about how we were at the beginning sometimes because it seems so long ago. So I totally echo you. If that funnel is sounding elitist, it's not. I think it's more describing my path. And I think there's like some other, like some grit and some like, there's no real frills with board climbing. There's no like, oh, hey, it's really nice. And we're out here in the Red and there's all this exposure and there's all this outdoor stuff where you're out in Bishop or something. It's just you and this board and ideally some friends that are psyched the same way that 10, 15 years ago, it would have been, we're just on the spray board, which, I mean, we could get into that. Like spray boards are kind of coming back as well. Jonathan has a great spray board. So does Alex. Like there's a lot of cool movement to be had in the spray wall.
Oh, I mean, I love it all. Like I love all the different, styles of climb you just talked about. And it was fun to think about what it was like when I first started again, like just what was my headspace like? It's actually why I like going and doing different disciplines. And I'll tell you that I remember the first time I went deep water soloing and I felt like I was a kid again. Like there was something about just this purity of like, I don't know, I'm scared. I'm with my buddies. It's really exciting. I don't really know what to do. It's kind of like, let's go up. Like it's like climbing in that deepest sense of the word when you first start something new and you're really out of your depth, but you just kind of are groping around, having fun. And so, I love that we'll get into boards, but I know that you have a big background beyond just being in the underground garage. Although, dude, I was just thinking about this. So we talked about the cellar, talked about being underground. And then I love that your exposure to the moonboard was in an attic.
Yeah.
Like there's something about that I love. And it makes me think that's where Jonathan Segrist, J-Stars, is that the root of the name of his benchmark, Attic Addict, which is hard as hell, by the way.
Yeah, that thing's insane. You get some of these guys that are like at the absolute upper echelon top of, something that's not board climbing, right? I had a combo with him after he did Jumbo Love and he was like pretty earnestly like, yeah, the moonboard really helped me. I'm like, with Jumbo Love? And now I can kind of see it, he's just he's a monster to train with, and he's super inspiring to train with. He can have these big, like really long sessions of sustained hard climbing, like, V9 to V11 climbing on the board. And that's pretty in line with what he's doing outside, right? Like he's doing all these stacked boulders, and you see him do something like addict, and you're like, okay, this is it. He's doing that like 9 bolts up between the ninth and 10th bolt or something.
Yeah, that is one of the benchmarks I did not do on the 2016. And unfortunately, I just took it down, put up to 2024. And there's a top bit where there's that white pocket right in the middle of the board. And I haven't seen a video of him do it, but I'm thinking about, he must just own that hold. And it is bad. It is bad. And it is funny, like talking about the pinnacles of these sports. And I think about J-Star as being one of the top American sport climbers for decades. Just insanely good. And then it's like, oh, he's not really a boulder, not really a moon boarder, probably just did Jade, just, does these hard benchmarks. And it's so wild to think like that's, the style that they're not so good at, and just a good gut check. Like, oh yeah, wow, impressive. Good job, J-Star.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts about living in Vegas for so long and getting to be or ride the same frequency of some of the really top high end climbers of the discipline that I respect and don't either know a ton about or have a ton of experience, is that when we link up for training, it's usually on a board, and it's, you can get in with whatever their off season is, or whenever he's back in town, or whenever Alex is back in town. And it's really cool to see that is like a common denominator for a lot of these higher end pros, is the board climbing, is the training, whether it's for power endurance and their 4x4s or whatever. And it's really cool to just ride that wave with them.
So you were just in Rocklands, just thinking about training and, how boards are just kind of like this touch point that even all the best of the world come back to. And it can be thought of as training, although I'm sure we can talk about how it can be an end unto itself. No problem with that. Yeah. But you were just in Rocklands, and it's one of the reasons why I reached out to you is I just saw that trip report. You sounded like you had a blast. I love how there wasn't even talk about any climbs or grades. It was books and metal. And I know you were there a really long time ago. I mean, I got to tell you something that maybe people don't realize about your Ravioli is that but you also were a damn good climber before the boards. You may have become famous as Ravioli Biceps, but go look at, your 8A and you'll see that you were crushing a long time ago before that. In fact, I knew about you before you did your amazing benchmark, I don't know what you call it, like journey and cataloging, right? Maybe. Yeah. And so I'm curious, tell me about the Rocklands trip, and maybe we can get into some of how it felt now, like a decade later, and, all this board training under your belt. And just, what was the trip like, man?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I can take it back, and it's cool. And to think back at that time, when we were circling and you're looking at what everyone else is doing and going to Rocklands and stuff. I first went to Rocklands in 2013. I would have been like 25 at the time, 25 or 26. But I was coming off like doing, I think it was 2 out of the big 3 in Black Velvet, which is Wet Dream, Atlas Shrugged, and then Abaddon. And those are like the big Black Velvet 3, and I wanted to do them really bad. I did Atlas Shrugged and I did Wet Dream, and I was feeling really nice. Those are like world-class boulders. I still can like feel them under my skin. Those memories where you're like, oh, I'm always going to feel what this is, and I can just kind of transport back to it. So it was really cool. I had guided in Waco Tanks for a while, made some like awesome lifelong friends. So those boulders, the reason I bring them up is because I saw myself as, I'm a bigger, like, I think for climbing guy, I'm over 170 now. And I think I kind of was back then too. Maybe I was like 165. I've always hovered between like 160, 175. And back then I was like, my core is really strong. I have good compression and like tension on all my limbs and things like that. So like that's me. I'm like too heavy for like small holds, and I didn't really, but I was like, okay, this is my thing. And I think the reason I bring that up is because I think every climber can kind of relate to like what their thing is versus, sometimes it comes from within you, but other times it comes from like man, that guy's awesome at dynos. Dude, you're sick at dynos, whatever. You're so good at this and that. And it can kind of be a window opinion that comes in. But that's how I thought of myself going into Rocklands. So I was like, I want to do derailed was my big goal. I was like, oh, it's big, it's compression-y, I can slap it and stuff. And I did that. I think now it gets 8A plus or 8B. I still thought it was like 8B, but at the time it was like 8B plus. So that was the big goal. But obviously I wanted to try, I think Black Shadow was closed. So I didn't get to try Black Shadow. That was like, I thought I could do it because I was like, oh, it's a roof and the holds are pretty good and it's got all this tension. And then, of course, I wanted to try Shosholoza. That was the iconic Fred Nicole. You hear all the legends of him and Clem and all these guys going out and doing everything in Rockland. So I was like, oh man, I just want to do it. I want to do it. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it 12 years ago. I was having trouble with the initial like latch, like that contact strength latch. And then I was having trouble with the power aspect because it's really only two
It's a two
moves.
move, yeah.
Maybe it's a two and a half with a match, right? But like it's the one, maybe you match it or maybe you just fling up there, but it's really a two mover. And so I was kind of sad about that. I only got one day out at the Sassy's last trip, the last time I was there. But I was like, oh, I'll be back. I'll be back soon. Rocklands is amazing. I'll be back soon. And then cut to 12 years, So just, I guess for your audience too, especially your younger audience, they're probably obsessed if they're listening to you, but it's okay. So if there's like a double edge to you may get back to it soon, but you may want to go all out because you may not get back to it. And you may want to just do that second day on or wake up way early in the morning, even though you're tired or whatever, have that kind of last day. So
Dude, I love that you say that. And I love that you have that hindsight of 12 years, because that's something that I didn't realize a long time ago either. Is I kind of have this thing where if you know you can do something, like let's say you're kind of on the boulder, you're working out the moves, and just in your heart, you're like, I could do this. I can do this. Try to get it done right then, because temps might be perfect that day, or you might be having a low gravity day, or you might never come back, or you might get hurt, or it might break like Shosholoza was prone to breaking. And I hope that you're about to tell us the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow story where you went back and did it. But that is actually more rare than people think. And you think you're going to be back out there. You think things are going to go a certain way in life, and they may not.
yeah, I have kind of the full wave arc, but I'll tell the rest of the Shosholoza story. So yeah, 12 years, the opportunity comes by. It's like most people I'm sure that are listening, it doesn't get easier to just go climbing for a month as you get older. It gets harder, right? So I had to do all this, beg, borrow, steal, jump through all these hoops to get 3 weeks off or 3.5 weeks off to go back to Rocklands. And it was, it's great with a good group, but I remember thinking, yeah, I really want to do Shosholoza. I want to climb on it. I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to do it, which is a nice feeling. I was feeling really strong coming up into the trip. Core wise, I was climbing on different boards. So the only reason I was climbing off the moon board is because I wanted to kick it back to like 50, 55. I just felt like it would be nice to get a little bit more full body to round out finger strength and stuff. So get there and warm up a little bit. I end up doing this 11 called Panama right near Shosholoza. It's like a one mover. It's like a kind of fingery, like one move low ball, like not test piece, but like it's like a kind of finger tester, like a finger warm up after you like warm up. So I was like, okay, cool. I did that like really quick. I was like, oh, I feel pretty good. And it was nice and cold. There was a bunch of people like, milling about. Shosholoza, for those that haven't been to that area, it just is this pedestal and it just sits and it's this centerpiece for the whole zone. So there's all these other boulders that I'm sure people have heard of, like Springbok, Splash of Red, Paul Abdul, all these classics that are around. But Shosholoza is the centerpiece. And I think Matthias did a dyno out to the right, but for the longest time, it was the only boulder. It's like a specter. There's no other climbs on the entire boulder, right? So it's got this really cool silhouette and you walk up to it and you can't miss it. And there's some people milling about, set up the pads, and I'm like, kind of like, okay, cool. I'll try to re-warm up on it. It's got this like interesting layback start to it that you maybe wouldn't like immediately notice if you watch the videos of it. It just kind of looks like you're pulling on a jug when people do it, but it's got this like kind of layback start. So you have to kind of almost fall into that little knob crimp thing. So I'm cool. I'm like trying that a couple times and I see this guy use a higher foot. I'm like, okay, let me try that, like higher foot. And then I just like, I stick it. And then I'm like, oh, this is like amazing. It feels really good. And then I just like jump up and do it. I do the boulder. And it was like real surprising, very quick. And it was like, damn, that is like a 1-to-1 translation. Like there's a couple 1-to-1 translations for board to outdoor. Like I think Thunderbird or like Direction, that I think is like pretty 1-to-1, especially for 2016. But that just felt like, oh, this is everything. Big foot, you can pop off of, a lot of room to just like huck and throw. You're catching something out here, like out of your shoulder pocket. That kind of, you see people when they grab that backhand flat plate jug, you see their body kind of jerk. Like it couldn't be more of a translation, right? So it just felt really awesome and like pretty effortless. I just felt like I'd done the move a bunch of times, even though it's way out in the middle of Africa and it takes like 30 hours to get to it. It felt very familiar. So I think that was kind of the takeaway is that, wow, having that familiarity felt really great.
It is so fun to come back to things and then put them down, quote unquote, easily. Cause the behind the scenes is I knew you were there. I was curious about kind of what climbs really did translate well to board climbing and what climbs didn't. And I was like, do you have any specific examples? And now that I think about Shosholoza is just, it is a board to a T. I feel like you could set a replica of that on something. Maybe that jump to the, it's like, so big swoop to a good crimp, kind of come in, jump, and it's a big move to a juggy plate. It's almost a little behind you. The only thing that maybe is a little different, it's a touch behind you. Ooh, it's a good one.
Yeah, so you'd have to maybe have something that's a little bit more three-dimensional with a swoop to catch behind you. But I mean, there's that kind of like a slightly depressed soft jug
on the TB2, right?
On the TB2. Yeah. That is what it would feel like. It would feel like if you went and did whatever downright hold into like one of the chicken nuggets or what are those like little like
KFC.
triangle the KFCs, and then like you went up into that. I don't have it in front of me, but that's like, I don't know. I mean, it felt like on 40 degrees, it would almost feel like Iron Arm from 2016. Like that is like the movement, even if it's not the left, right, left, or it would be right, then left. It's that same giant pull. The board does a few things pretty well, and damn, that's one of them.
You know what's interesting about that as an example is that when Fred Nicole is the one who put up that climb and he locks off that first move. And it's just kind of an interesting thing about how if you climb on boards, like one of the kind of secrets, especially on the moon board, I feel like is to jump and catch. Like that the holds are pretty positive, especially at that ability level that you have where, like I don't want to say those holds are jugs, but you can't jump and latch a 6 mil on a 40-degree overhang. But those KFCs or something like that, they're pretty positive. And Shosholoza kind of exhibits that. But you look at the old school, and that's not how Fred unlocked that problem. Now, Fred also has lock-off strength that is maybe second to none, literally. So maybe that's just how he would do it. But it just is kind of an interesting example of the new ways in which we are training, I'll just say training, and how that changes how a boulder might feel because it kind of makes you approach it like it was a board.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's really cool to see full community adoption of like momentum and using that momentum and using that swing and how you can, oh, hey, I got to slow the swing down. I got to control this a little bit. And that all that is like you're just like dialing in the momentum with the core and how hard you jump and things like that. And now what's cool is being in Rocklands and seeing like the new crew of, 18 to 22-year-olds that are just even taking that to another level, right? With the comp climbing and with the coordination. And, Rocklands is an extremely dynamic place. And we can get into it in a second, like weaknesses or where I struggled or like where I like self-critiqued. But seeing these people that are able to do these like coordination piece dynos or they do Corazon in a couple tries because they're just so familiar with doing these big engagements on not that steep of walls, right? They just have that ultra confidence that is awesome to see. It's really cool. That was not there when I was there in 2013. I thought I went to Rocklands late. I was like, oh, I'm getting on it way late. Oh man, it's already tapped out, whatever, when I went in 2013. And now you just see it's like not only is it not tapped out, people are just going absolutely nuts with the dynos and the coordination.
Oh man, that Sassy's area just going. I went in 2015 and I think I was only there for a day as well. And you listed these amazing, I don't know, I'll call them like 4 or 5 star problems. Springbok, incredible. And then for me, I think the next one I did was Pinotage, which is just gorgeous. And then Shosholoza, and then Splash of Red, which I actually thought was maybe one of the highlights of Rocklands. I think that is a ret that just begs to be climbed and was spicier than I thought. I remember I thought I was tough coming from Bishop high balls. I thought I had good high ball head on, and I got up there and I thought, okay, I'm in Africa. I'm off the deck. This is still hard. And just those memories of that place. Yeah. Was it more crowded? What was it? Yeah. Coming back 12 years later, what was the place like just as a vibe compared to back then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say more accommodations. When I was there in 2013, you had to buy like a Wi-Fi voucher that gave you like a certain amount of megabytes or something like that. Was it like that when you
It was
went
like
in
50
2015?
megabytes, dude.
Yeah,
Like 50 megabytes. Yeah.
yeah, it was something crazy. So now everywhere is all Wi-Fi'd out. There's tons more accommodations. It seems like everybody knows and is used to, well, what the climbing experience is. Hey, they come for usually a longer time than maybe a weekend visitor, and they're just out there to climb, and then they want to eat at night, right? So there's just more of, I would say more of that. Yeah, definitely more people. I mean, I went basically all of June, and toward the end, I think that was maybe early season, so toward the end it started getting pretty packed. Not that I struggled with that a bit, but I spend so much time climbing alone, and I spend so much time just in my own head or my own thoughts, and climbing's really become, for me, this decompression or escape from what I do for work and like my career. So I think everyone was very friendly, but I think just getting used to different energies at the boulder with a ton of people is an adjustment.
I mean, you are really famous. Do people recognize you? In fact, Ravioli, I just wanted to show you in solidarity. I'm wearing a shirt here.
Yes.
Underground
Hell
shirt.
yeah.
I've got my sticker. I know it should be on my board, but I got a Brushfly board sticker. And
Hell yeah.
I don't buy a lot of climbing stuff. I'm too old for that. And yet I still bought your stuff. And so when did you get a hint that what you were doing was somehow extremely famous? Because I assume you did get recognized even all the way out in Africa.
A couple times it was funny. I think it's more just the tattoos. If I'm like in short sleeves and shorts or something like that, or if I'm climbing without my shirt on, I think it's like, hey, this is the guy that's got a bunch of like specific or distinct tattoos. So it was cool. I had a couple good interactions. A big group from the UK, which is cool. And it just, every time I chat with like climbers from the UK, I'm like, I haven't met like any climbers that have like weak fingers that are on a big trip. They all have like such strong fingers, all of them. They'll tell you they don't. They're all humble, but you're like, yeah, dude, like you're from the spot where you just get your strong fingers in the basement. And I think that's cool. But every time I chat with a group of people from the UK, I'm like, man, I got to go, even if it's just to go see all the board history and stuff. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, I think it's kind of fun, to have those connections, right? Isn't it, I think I heard you on one of your other podcasts talking about like, I think it was with Hamish, where anywhere you go, you can find a commonality, right? I try to be that. I don't travel as much anymore, especially I don't travel outside of like my Southwest US region much anymore, but I try to be like that host when people want to come. Hey, do you need a pad? Because the people have done that for me. Martin's helped me out when I go to Switzerland. People have helped me out in Africa. Like, I want to be that when people come to Vegas, especially international. It makes it hard. So I think that's kind of the fun part of, I don't know, I guess being recognized or or something like that, is having like a cool connection. And then, hey, dude, you ever come to Vegas? I'll hook you up with a pad or whatever.
Dude, the community is great like that. I got hooked up with someone in Fontainebleau way before I did this podcast and stuff. Like, it's a tight community. And yeah, that thing I said to Hamish was this concept of some of the goals that we have as humans are to be at home anywhere. And it was a Heidegger quote. And it's the community, man. I feel like that's something that was fun in board climbing. Is my little journey, just totally mimicking you, is I built a board in my barn during COVID, and I was by myself doing I want to do all the benchmarks. I want to do them all, because why wouldn't you want to do them all? And then, people are messaging me, like the DeWolf brothers.
Oh yeah, I love those guys.
They're just great. And, they're like, if you're in Germany, like, come hang out, like, come climb. And I don't know, the ability to connect, of course it's fun to be in the underground and be just trying hard, doing your thing. But that's a big part of climbing, man, is having friends and meeting new people all the way in Africa. You fly 30 hours, you can get further away from your home and you're surrounded by friends. I really love that.
Yeah, I think that's like when I explain to like coworkers or non-climbers like what that trip is like. They're like, "Oh, are you going with people? Are you doing this? Are you doing that?" It's like, "Well, yeah, I'm like staying with some friends, and then that's amazing." But I'm like, it's a destination, so you never know who you're going to run into. I remember being in Switzerland under Vecchio and being like looking at this guy, and I hear the American accent. And I'm like, I think that's Paul Nadler. Like I haven't seen him in forever, but we climbed way long ago, and it was just really cool to have that connection and just kind of that recognition right there. Those moments are so cool.
I feel like if you climb, you're going to run into Paul Nadler. That's like a definite. Okay, well, take me back to Rocklands, and you had amazing success on the board style climb, Shosholoza. Although I say board style, it's just a wonderful climb. Like, that's not a reason to necessarily go do it. It sits on a pedestal. It's a gem for sure. What about things that you didn't have as much success on? And, I'm not trying to give you crap. Like, everyone has a weakness. It's just interesting to hear from someone who is training in a way. I say training. I hate using that word still. You're climbing on boards a lot, just like I do, just like a lot of us do who don't have a ton of time. And it's interesting hearing about what works, what doesn't, and what that kind of teaches you about your own climbing, how you might prepare differently, or just the reality of board climbing and going to Rocklands.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think a critique coming back is I went into the trip and I wanted to obviously climb, but I really wanted to get away from my phone. I wanted to like fully unplug. I wanted to just like not be on anything. I wanted to read a bunch of books. I had like a book tick list that I wanted to work through and stuff. And then I wanted to climb. And I'm starting to wonder if it was like in that order. And I know I wanted to do Shosholoza and I wanted to do Black Shadow too. And there were other things. I think I probably could have picked projects better. There were certain things I didn't try that I think if I would have tried guest list, I think it would have suited to a board style looking at it. I never tried it. I got really excited on Musti Misi. Well, yeah. I never know how to say it.
Good, good enough.
Someone correct me. But so I had a really great session, did all the moves in a session and had some like really good overlapping links. And that was one that I just didn't end up doing. I didn't go away with it. And I think we think about this, where's a punt? Where's a fall that you shouldn't have fallen? And I don't really love that. I think even when I did Wet Dream however many years ago, like I was falling at the top. Lots of people fall at the top of Wet Dream. Like, oh, I punted it. I don't know. I think there's something that's useful to give your brain that feedback of like, oh, I need to try harder in the moment. I need to make the most of this moment in the go. But I think being so hard on yourself, it can lead to like a bad cycle. I think I got there a little bit because I fell a couple times where I'm like, I shouldn't be falling like on that traverse over. And it's just, my core felt really good on it. Like I was very surprised with that being, I would say, not a board style climb really at all, except maybe in the core engagement. It's like heel hook, toe hooks like the whole way. But I found my core to be like really strong on it. I was just getting pumped. Did not have the endurance, and I'll tell you a quick story going up to this cliff with Mike Doyle. He got me out sport climbing I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I was like, I want to do it more because I want to spend time with my friends, and they all sport climb. So I'm like, well, they're not training. I guess I got to go sport climb with them to hang out with them. So I go up with them and I'm like dogging everything bolt to bolt, not even bolt to bolt. I just didn't have the endurance. And I think that's something that I could have done better with project selection, probably getting some endurance. But the trip really got me excited to climb outside more here because the last two big trips I've taken to South Africa and to Switzerland, I've like tried to do and have sometimes been successful to do like an 8B, that range within the trip. But
Wow.
that's a huge pressure. It's a pressure that we're choosing, right? We have the ownership to say I want to try hard on this, and I felt really good trying hard and being, for me, successful, like to do all the moves and to almost do them. But I didn't do Vecchio either. Spent a ton of time on it, left it on the table, and that's okay. But I want to have some projects, and I'm feeling fit enough to have some longer projects here in Vegas where I can get to them, where I can have them, and there's not that pressure. Because I think as you push yourself, you have to really be mindful of where you're crossing like the kind of mental wellness line of what do you want out of this trip? Right? Do you want to just sit and obsess about it? I try to like in my younger climbing, I was maybe more outwardly or vocally like harsh on myself or just talking about it all the time. And you see those things like, okay, well, where is that line? I think I got kind of close to it. I think there were a couple times I got over it where I'm like just kind of feeling negative about performance or myself. But then you kind of pull yourself back off the edge, pulling myself back off and saying, okay, you're out here. You want to do this, right? You want to go and have these sessions and go and do this. That's why you're here. But I think those are maybe two critiques coming back. But I think it's exciting. It's the same way talking back earlier about how I was so set on the fact that I was like a roof climber or a steep climber or a big move climber or a heavier climber. Like, well, no, now I've done lots of crimp lines. I've done lots of like hard for me crimp lines on small holds. That's cool. You can change, right? So now I'm motivated to try some stuff here in Vegas, have a longer project.
Yeah, something I've kind of headed towards on these trips where you watch a video or a movie and you get in your head about doing Vecchio or Socialoza or whatever the one may be. And I feel like when I do try the problem, if I really give it my all and I come away empty handed, even if it's one session that I got on it, I think I'm feeling better about just getting to grab those grips and feel those movements. And I think it also comes from having success on the climbs. When I think back to my trip in South Africa and the ones that I wanted to do and didn't do, like, so I did Socialoza as well, and I didn't do other climbs, similar like kind of grade that I would have liked to do and coveted. And I don't know if when I look back, I'm like, yes, Socialoza was the best thing ever. And then Sky sucked because I didn't do Sky. Like, I kind of just remember them and I kind of was like, man, that was cool. Like, those were great.
Yeah. And I think you have the good takeaway on that. I don't want to see it eat at people, right? And like, oh, I got to get the back. It's like you said, it was amazing to climb on these. We're talking about incredible boulders. We're talking about you're traveling, you're spending the time, the money, the energy, the resources to go. You're probably going to want to try the best things in the area for whatever your ability is, right? So there's a gratitude to even being able to try those. I'm with you. It got me excited to climb more outside, which I haven't honestly been, so dialed. I've been like focusing on other stuff in life. So I haven't been as like truly motivated or focused to climb outside.
Let's get into that, but just my closing remark on that, because this is something young Josh did that I wish I hadn't done. And now I want to say, don't do this if you're young, is that I used to feel almost like a ownership over a boulder that I thought I could do it. Like, let's say I'm climbing on, I don't know, V hard, whatever. I don't want to put a number on. And I saw someone and I was like, you can't do this. Like, you climb 4 grades below. Why are you greasing up my holds? But now, just in that same vein of what I was saying, you grew up watching movies of Chris Sharma on it and you just want to have that experience too. And now I'm like, go for it. Like, you may never touch these holds again. You may never go to South Africa again. Go for it. And I think that's something that's special about our sport is that I can go try Burden of Dreams. I may not be able to do Burden of Dreams, but I can go try it. And so, if you're out there and you see someone that's so psyched that they want to grab the grips on your project, like, encourage them. Like, good for them that they're so excited and they love it like you do, where I feel like I used to be like, don't grease my holds up. What are you doing here? You don't belong here. And that's not good. Don't do that. Don't be like that.
I agree. Yeah, there's really not like you got to earn it. Build out your pyramid before you touch this. Like it doesn't matter, you know. So I would echo that. I think that's great. That makes me think of stuff I would see when I was guiding in Waco tanks because you have a diverse group of abilities, goals, things like that. So
Quick break while I tell you about today's sponsor, Mad Rock Climbing. Mad Rock is always at the cutting edge of climbing. They're known for innovation, and that's because they're climbers who keep pushing the limits of what is possible in gear technology. Like the drones. Everyone knows you have to have a pair of drones in your quiver because sometimes that heel makes it almost feel like cheating. Almost. If you want to hear more about the latest innovations going on there and what's coming next, be sure to check out episode number 147 with their CEO, Kenny Suh. It's a total banger. The other thing that drives Mad Rock is an ethos that climbing is for everybody. And that means making the best gear affordable. That's why Mad Rock has promised to keep their prices the same through at least the summer, despite the turmoil that tariffs have brought to the industry. They're not going to lower quality, reduce staff for their pay, or cut corners in any way. They're just going to take the hit so you don't have to. Like their founder Young Chu said, making good gear isn't hard. Making it affordable, that's the challenge. Go check them out now at madrock.com. Okay, back to the pod. Okay, so you're back stateside, and you kind of hinted at this where part of your time on boards have been that you don't have as much time as you would like, you and everyone else. That's my other PSA is, and you said this earlier, as you get older, you have less time. You do not somehow get more time. Things get more busy. So appreciate whatever time you do have right now, because you're probably going to have less of it in the future. Although it sounds like now your life has kind of stabilized a bit. You're not forced to always do 2 a.m. sessions in your garage. What's that look like for you now? Like, how do you balance your love of board climbing? How do you pick your projects nearby home? What's this new season coming up going to look like for you? Because it's still summer, but season's coming.
it's still summer, but something that everyone in Las Vegas and probably Arizona and stuff, it's like you have to just almost be delusional, like, okay, it's only a month, it's only a month, it's only a month. It's like Vegas is still hot as hell in October, but once those burrs start hitting on the end of a month, you're like, no, dude, I'm gonna go out, I'm going to Black Velvet, I'm going to Icebox Candy. It's like people are just clawing at the bit. It's the same like growing up in the Midwest when winter ends, people are like out there grilling in shorts when it's 45 degrees and the sun's out because they're like, springtime, it's coming, so it's hot here. It's the dog days. I mean, I'm getting in my car and it just sits and bakes and I'm seeing like 117 on the dash. And I'm like, bro, this is brutal. We're fortunate in Vegas. We have good AC. There's good spots to climb. There's good spots to train. But yeah, I would say coming into it, it's funny when you're out of those graveyard sessions or climbing at 2 a.m. It's like, I do kind of have some nostalgia for them. There's something cool about being up and climbing when everyone else is asleep. I think there's just something nice about it. So embrace it, get the sessions in when you can. But yeah, now I'm a little bit more stabilized. Things are a little bit more of like a regular 9 to 5 or like a day shift. So yeah, my goal for the season is to get out one day a week, one day a weekend, kind of like a weekend warrior guy. I could probably get out after work if I'm really excited. That would be something that's good. I'm pretty close to Red Rock, which is amazing, but I want to get more time on some hard things, some stuff in Black Velvet, some stuff that's been put up the last couple of years. I just want to get some more time on rock. And then I've been really enjoying getting some time in on these other boards as well. Being the the big obsessed board guy that I am, I have all my numbers for like stuff I've done. And when I look at like tension, I don't have TB1 numbers, but I have like how many climbs I've done on TB2 and kilter. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh, they're like still in their infancy for me on learning the board. I think it takes, 1,000 problems to learn a board plus. That would be my line of understanding. I think it takes a long time to understand these boards and all their nuance. So that's gonna be the goal is to still try hard, setting, trying hard, trying limit, seeing these board lords put up stuff that's like in the crazy realm. I'd like to just do some of these moves. I got really excited when I heard Michael Rosado talking about just him and Will pieced some of these moves together, and Ben Burkhalter. I was cool. It was cool they had him on as well because he's great, awesome setter. He's been an awesome setter forever.
Great setter.
Shout out to him and all those guys. But to just do some of these moves, I want to do individual, really hard moves and get after it because I think it can be so easy to just try stuff that's I can do in a session or I can do in a couple sessions. I want to have some longer projects to dig into and to understand.
What is the hardest move you've done on, I don't know, you could choose the different boards, but yeah, when I say what's the hardest move you've done on the board, like what instantly jumps out at you?
Geez, that's a really great question. Immediately, I would probably say like the Black Beauty or Project 2. Those come to mind immediately, and only because I spent so much time on them. I kind of want to get back to that. Whether I can like rise to that ability, I still believe I can, or it's going to take longer. Some of those individual moves, I mean, it's 6 months, it's a year, and I want to do some of that stuff on TB2 as well. Some of those like individual, like maybe not one move, but like I think it's the two move zone that gets really tough, right? Where it's you're latching something and then moving off of it to something else. That two move combo, I think, is where it gets really cool and you can have these infinite combos. But as far as one move, I'm having a little bit of difficulty thinking.
I'll put mine out there just to give you your subconscious a moment. And this is, I feel like one of the harder moves I've done ever. And it doesn't get talked about, but it's because it's probably not that hard for people like you. But I think it's called Two Move Wonder on the 2019. You like snag this pinch, which I find pretty good. And then you cross over to that little yellow thing. I will say that my yellow one was like a shallow pour, but honestly, I don't think that changed it. Like for me, it was just hard to generate, hard to move through that. And I've done thousands of board climbs, and I feel like that one sticks out in my head as one of the harder moves I've done.
That one's really hard. That's a great example. That one's tough because I find the hardest board moves are where my feet are all like maybe jacked up into like a small box. This is what I realized on the 2016, where you start to realize what setters are good at, setters like Magos or Ben, honestly, that they're able to do really big snatchy moves out of a kind of smaller, tighter box, right? Like they're all loaded up. They got all this energy and all this force like loaded, and to be able to just really extend and get into like a big box or a snatch or something that's like contact strength, and the smaller the hold, then you're starting to get into these like really limit climbs. That to me is the mark of a really hard move for me.
Same. Although when I see videos of like Hosik doing that move and the way he owns that pinch, which I gotta tell you, I like that pinch. Like this is this little wooden pinch, and I actually find it really positive and good. But it's one thing to like a hold. It's another to have, like a foot up high by it and then basically just ISO it. It looked like he could do like a one arm pull up on it versus, I mean, it's not a jug. It's still a small hold. Oh, I love seeing those feats of strength by some of those guys. It's so fun.
Yeah, the Hosiak stuff is just out of control, crazy. His shoulders are unreal, and all his friends' ability to like spin around on stuff, because I feel like he gets talked about a lot, but like Dong Yu Lee is unreal. And I'm not even putting them against each other. I'm just saying, like, you hear people talk about Hosiak, but I'm like, dude, there's a whole crew, Koala, these guys that are just doing insane things. I remember talking to Sam Pryor about grading for the 2019 set and how I felt like as like the Moon moderators or people that set grades and benchmarks, I feel like we failed the community in that grading, in that bottleneck, because they were having, Florian Wentes, all these guys set, and the DeWolf brothers are insanely strong. And it was like, oh, is it hard? 7C. I don't know. Just 7C, 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 V9. And then Hosek was like, hey, like all of us here in South Korea, like we put a ton of pride and we put a ton of like personal achievement and marking our progress on the grades here on the board. Like it's not a ton of outdoor climbing. So we put a lot of stock into these grades. I think they should be teased out a bit. Like there's some 7Cs that are 7C. There's some 7Cs that feel 8C, like it's out of control. So that's maybe a tangent on board grading, but that type of stuff and those type of moves being at least a little bit more honest within the board grade system is huge because people put a lot of emphasis on it, especially, you're in a place like where I grew up or, where I kind of came into climbing in Chicago. It's like, there's nothing. That's all you got. So you want to test yourself over, against your peers.
Yeah, I like hearing that because when we get into grading about boards, people often will say like, oh, well, it's just training. Or I complained about my shallow pores and, people would just say like, oh, well, who cares? Like, it's just training. I'm like, I was in my barn waiting out COVID for a month. I was like, it wasn't training. I was not training in there. I was climbing, and to allow me to care about things, to have that respect, those nuances in the grades, get teased out and not just slap, 7C moniker on, just say, well, who cares? And I was like, I care. And you used this term when we were chatting last about board acceptance. And I thought this would be a good segue into that. Yeah. What do you mean when you talked about board acceptance in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold, right? I think it's like the established people that are hardcore board climbers in that hardcore board climbing community. Like they're going to stay hardcore. But I mean, you hit on it when you said you used to have the opinion, and I would say I did too. I just hadn't thought about it in a long time of, hey, you're a VX climber. Why are you climbing Z? Like you should climb a bunch more X's and some Y's before you climb Z. And I think if I could do a PSA, right? I mean, number one is brushing. And then number two, I guess, would be like that acceptance of like you can have such a huge impact if you just show, yeah, it's on an app. Here's the app. Here's the light switch or whatever. Oh, we're doing this. This board mirrors. Oh, this board doesn't mirror, it's fixed or whatever. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to be this ambassador and take out of your session, but just accepting that people are curious, right? The commercial gym I climb at here in Vegas is Refuge most often, and you have to walk by all the boards. I'm sure there's plenty of gyms around the country, the same thing. You walk by this centerpiece of boards and you always get these heads turning, people with like rental shoes, and it's their first maybe 10, maybe 20 times climbing before they buy their own pair of shoes. And they're looking and they're curious, right? I'm not saying they need to jump right on the board, but as they climb commercially and as they kind of talk, and if they have a stronger friend, that's their mentor. That's usually the case, that climbs a couple grades harder or whatever. Like, I think that acceptance is important because I think boards are here to stay in a gym, right? So that acceptance and that etiquette and getting away from the elitism, like when I think about like, okay, me being underground, that's what I want to do, right? That's me. That's kind of how I want to be. But a lot of that means having combos and talking to people, whether it's, people send me messages like, hey, they did their first thing. Hey, they set their first thing. I got one of those this morning. I was preparing and doing notes for the podcast, and, there's like a couple times a week, I'm like, I'm done with Instagram. I just want to delete it, but then I'll get a cool message like that. And I'm like, oh, that makes it worth it. This person's excited. They just set their first board problem and, they want to talk about it or have some feedback, or I'll hear a really cool story where someone said, oh, I was coming back from an injury too, and I got on the boards, things like that. So that would be the first like board acceptance. And then I would say newer climbers going into the board, I think, like, understand that there's a space for you if you're starting to go to the gym and, maybe you only have the board, or maybe you have, this has been an issue in gyms I've climbed at where they don't reset the commercial set like more than like once a year, twice a year, so it's like, hey, you climbed on everything that you can climb on for your ability. Yes, you can go climb on the board. Just understand that there's like a little bit of a learning curve, and just be patient with it is what I would say. That's kind of board acceptance. But I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're still kind of getting going if I think about it.
Yeah, I feel like also just the acceptance of just spending a ton of time on there, where I'm sure you got lots of flack early on where it was like, dude, what are you doing on the board? Like, you look so strong. Come out and get on this with me. Not that you don't get out, and if you have more time, like you're saying, you get out more. But I just want to put out there, like, now I'm seeing kids who, like the best guy on TB2 Mirror right now, Sean RHM. Well, and he is in the Midwest. He doesn't have rocks around them. And, like, I would still encourage him to climb outdoors because it is fun. Just like we were talking about earlier. So is sport climbing. So is trad climbing. So is the commercial set. But also, if he wants to dive in, I feel like nowadays we're like, it's okay. Like, you're incredible. You're world class at this sub discipline, and that's okay. And I feel like there's more acceptance of that now than when you kind of were. I don't know if you got mocked or made fun of by your buddies, or like, what are you doing there, man? Like, get out of the garage.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's like, what are you training for? What are you going to get on? What are you going to do this? And yeah, I remember feeling really early and kind of sticking with the fact that I was like, well, this is fun to me. This is what I'm motivated on, right? I really feel like you have to follow what you're motivated on. And I feel super grateful when I look at a climb like Pixel Bricks or something else I've said on like the fact that so many people have climbed that and they've had the exposure to it, or anything I've said. I'm like, even if something has one repeat, I'm like, this is awesome. It's in the world. It's cool. We can talk about it. That's why I encourage people to set and to send me stuff. And I try to climb as much as I can of what people send me and give feedback and stuff, because I think there's so much value that initially it's becoming more accepted, like you said, but initially I got, what are you training for? This isn't a means to an end. This isn't an end in itself. This has to be a means to going to do the nest or going to do something else. But I don't believe that.
So you talked about how sometimes commercial sets don't get reset very often. And then, boy, are you grateful to have a board in your gym. And this is how we used to actually do our spray wall. Is me and my crew, we would climb everything in the gym. This idea is you need to climb every boulder in the gym, and then we would spray wall. And then oftentimes after spray walling, we'd like run laps on some of the things to get more endurance. And you talked about this idea of completionism, or, doing all the benchmarks. And I think that there's something to that deep in us as climbers. Like when I first walked out to the buttermilks in Bishop, I was like, I want to do all of them. Now I did not do all of them, but there's something like, I don't know what it is as a climber. I think that you want to climb it all. And the whole benchmark system, at least how I used it, kind of suggested that is a reasonable goal. And I know that that's what you did. I mean, you did all the 2016 benchmarks, and I was wondering why you chased that and kind of what it taught you about climbing by having that be a goal.
What I would say about the completionism is, when I was guiding in Waco, to take it back a little bit, I guided and met and have been friends with since a guy named Nate Drolet. You probably know him or know of him in the space. He's doing awesome stuff. But we used to have this thing called All the Boulders, ATB. We're going to do all the boulders. We're just going to do all of them, and we were guiding so much. We were doing all these like 2-star, whatever, obscurities and doing these things and finding a ton of joy in the movement and finding a ton of stuff. Like, that's been in me, since those guiding days. That's been in me since like video game days back in I want 100% this game, and I want to platinum Dark Soul or whatever. I want to do all this stuff, even like the early, like RPG games as a kid and stuff like that. So I think that's in it. But one of the cool things with the benchmark stuff is if you give yourself those parameters, if you give yourself I'm going to do all the benchmarks that I can do, it forces you to climb some stuff that you probably wouldn't climb otherwise. And that, I think, is the biggest value. I'm not great at big lockoffs. I'm not great at this, or crossover dynos or whatever. I think about the climb Bazoo was like one of my first big roadblocks in 2016. And I was coming off my broken foot. And I was like, I just need to see someone do this. I just need to see this done. I can visualize it, but I can't really like conceptualize it. If that distinction kind of makes sense, I can't like see it happening with my body because it's like this big kind of flip and your body jerks and it's you're going a couple moves across your body and I remember finding an old video just buried somewhere of like Dong Yu Lee doing it and I was like, I think there needs to be more stuff kind of like this and it was just like buried deep within a slide or something like that. It wasn't I didn't know of any accounts that were just only posting board stuff and I thought it would be kind of cool to have that out there. But I wouldn't have done that if I would have just been like, oh, I'm going to just kind of climb on it until I get better and then go outside. I never would have done Bazoo because I just would have kept flipping. But I was like, I have to do it.
I just love that you were so deep in, like, Instagram world, looking through slides, looking for that Instagram because it is funny when you see someone do it, something often clicks in your head. Although this is actually why I'm so impressed when people FA really hard stuff is because they don't have that and they have to believe and they have to commit. And I really love that completionism idea and just the activity of being forced to do climbs that you wouldn't have otherwise do. And the 2019 is kind of the set that I was most successful on that. This was a long time ago. And so there was like way more problems now, but I didn't do the last two, but they were really difficult. And I felt okay letting myself go on that. It was flows. I can't remember what it was, just hard. And then it was Aiden Roberts' one he did, and they were so hard, but I really struggled. I really struggled with a lot of them, but I really struggled with this V10 called Lock Guard. And it was the easiest one, supposedly. Like that's the one that was the most repeated. And it would have been really easy for me to go by it, to just say, I'm not going to do this one. It's tough for me for whatever reason. And I just love not being forced into, but just making that decision ahead of time that I'm going to figure it out. And it brought me into tryhards that I didn't have before, as well as being more creative with beta and things and not doing it like I saw other people do it because, it wasn't for me. And so I think that's actually one of the hidden things behind boards and benchmarks that people don't talk about enough is you might say, I'm going to do all the V6s. And let me tell you, you don't know which V6 has your number, but one of them does, honestly, even if you're a V12 climber. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a perfect example. I was chatting with a guy a couple days ago and he did this V6 that I set. It's benchmarked on the 2024 called GameCube. And he's like, this was my last V6. And it was so cool. And even just in that small message, I knew all the story and the emotion behind it, right? I may not know the nitty gritty details, but I'm like, oh, I know what it's like to have your last V9 or your last V10 that, like you said, it's got your number, even if it's the most repeated. Lockguard is awesome. I think the setter of that, I'm pretty sure, is Lukey may offer. And he's unreal setter. He's got a great feel for, moves like that he excels in. He's got one on the 2024 called, it's like Panabile or something like that, but it's got this crazy cross. You're extended, you have all this tension, and it's got this crazy cross across your body. I haven't done it yet, but it's just like, I know when I dig in, that's going to take me developing something that I don't have right now. And I think that is really cool to see.
Something that I struggled with, well, in all moonboarding, but I noticed it more in the 2016 set, is that sometimes benchmarks or any climb, but I'll just say benchmarks, can feel very binary to me, where I just feel like either I can do it or I just straight up can't. And I'm tempted to just swipe to the next one. But you said something earlier on where it was like, oh, it took me 6 months. How do you go about dealing with a move that just seems, I don't know, man. Sometimes those moves, I have a hard time even like grokking how they could be done by me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of goes into another part of boarding that I would say is like really listening to your body. And I'm not saying like, oh, I feel good or I feel whatever. I'm like talking about very actively every single problem that you do on it after your ideally long warm up. Like I know, like last Sunday, I've been doing more like 2 days on, and I was ramping that up to like 2 board days on. I try to do kind of 2 hard board days on if I can. And that was ramping up to South Africa. I've kind of kept on it a little bit, but on Sunday, I was feeling like absolute trash. I climbed Saturday on the moon board, and then Sunday I was like, oh, I'll do like tension, kilter, whichever. And I was climbing on the tension. I'm like, I just need to back off. So that's the backdrop for how I approach these really hard. And I would say binary is a pretty good word. Like, damn, I cannot do it. Blow the 7C on the 2016 took me months to do. It was just that snatch to the little shark tooth and then like crossing over the shark tooth. Like I just couldn't I have like big hands, big fingers. And I was like, I'm getting like 2.5 on there. So I think it's like carving out a part of your session where you try those moves, maybe just in the middle, or you try to kind of skill check yourself on how those moves feel, and then being okay to detach from it. Being okay to detach from it because your body will learn, it will adapt under the load on all that stuff. Like a lot of what I'm doing on the 2024 set is kind of digging through and trying to find things that would be good benchmarks. And I have a huge list of stuff I haven't done. And I just go through that. Hey, let me skill check this. Oh, how's that feeling? Oh, I think I just did a hard boulder that kind of has the same feel. Maybe let me try to see if that translated. I just did this one that has a big, huge, like right shoulder move. Maybe my right shoulder's feeling a little bit stronger or better. And then you can kind of skill check it. Another tip I would say that I tell people is if you're stuck on benchmarks, right? Like you have, like, let's use sixes. You have maybe 5 6s left for benchmarks. And you're like, I have to do these 5 6s before I move on to 7. It's like, no, just move on to 7. There's the sliding scale. You have kind of the more entry level 7s, or not even entry level, the ones that'll fit you better. If that is not working, I would turn off the benchmarks and go to most repeated and start doing most repeateds just to get like your palette of movements. Like you just want to get more movement and more reps under and on the board, and it will come. I truly believe.
When I think about moonboarding, especially moonboarding too, I think of it being, I'll use the word binary again, where I often think like, oh, I just need to jump in, latch this better. But I've also noticed that there's sometimes where there is a technique that I can employ that maybe wasn't clear in the beginning. And like, there's this one that came to mind as I was thinking about how to phrase this, where it was some like 11 on the 2019. You kind of like traverse a little from the right to the left and then do like a one-arm jump.
Yeah. I think it's believing.
Yeah.
I think it's flooring. I think it's flow. Yeah.
Of course.
Of course it's flow, yeah.
The reason why I bring it up is I remember I like didn't do it, pulled on from the jump move, did the jump move very easily, and then watched my video. And I was like, what am I doing wrong on the go that I'm doing right? And what it turned out to be is I was more relaxed and sagged out when I started there. And it just kind of made it so the jump was easier because then I wasn't swinging out as far. Do you know what I mean? And what I mean is that it seems like when you have so few hand and foot options that there's not as much beta or technique that can be employed. Often outdoors, you can say, I'm going to try this foot or this foot or this foot or this hand or use this bump hold. I'm just wondering if you have any kind of operations you go through when you feel like it's a stopper move, but maybe it's not just shoulder power or something.
Yeah, totally. I know the outdoor stuff is like the curse of the eternal beta. You have to like sometimes go through the full circle of beta that you even like know it won't work before you come back and land
and commit.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, that's you nailed it right there. But yeah, I would say I read this book earlier this year where this professor, her first assignment for her students is to go to an art gallery and look at a painting for 3 hours straight. No phones, you can take a bathroom break, but nothing else, no distractions, nothing. And what they were talking about in this is that you get so restless, maybe that's what we're talking about with, hey, this is a stopper move, and immediately it's stopper. So your body has this reaction of it's a stopper move. Oh, I have this impulse to maybe swipe. I'm going to get more out of my session, which is cool. Sometimes you do it and whatever. But what they find is that every hour or even every like half, you find something new in the painting. You find something deeper, you find something textural, you find maybe an emotional reaction or something like that. And I think just having that time with the bowl, there's really no substitute to having that time with a benchmark and being in front of it and really understanding, like you said, I film a lot of my climbing, and what am I doing? Are my shoulders slightly getting higher and higher and higher as I do the boulder? When realistically, like you said, they maybe need to be a little bit sagged, a little bit lower. Maybe I need to rest a little bit longer. Maybe my hips are in a different way. Having the really specific feet and hand holds is cool because then it really puts a ton of emphasis, for better or worse. You got to deal with your body. And that can be hard because what I want to do is no, the foot's bad. No, the conditions are bad, and I still do all that stuff like everyone else, but it really just makes you focus on what my body needs to be doing. And I think you'll get that painting experience the longer you sit in front of and look at the boulder.
Ravioli, I really like that. I thought that was really cool. That idea of sitting with something and not running away from it, and you just zoom in more and more and more, and you get restless, and then you work past. I always think of myself as being more of a aesthetics-based boulderer, where I try to climb lines that I just find stunning and posing. I'm a little afraid of them, but I could also argue for just being entirely movement based, for just zooming into the micro. And I've made this argument a little bit before, where people will say that boards don't require technique, or they're very simple and it's just power. And I almost could argue the exact opposite, because there's only one foot. And so when you start zooming into that, you realize the infinite levels of beta and technique that you can have even with just one foot or one hand, which that was so cool, man. I love that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think it's fun to dig into this stuff. And like, I know you have the philosophy background and you like these bigger questions. I'm into the big questions too. I have to give a shout out to like an early climbing mentor here in Vegas, Craig Berman, who was really someone who he's movement forward. He's really, really movement based. He's a Cirque du Soleil performer, and here in Vegas, and since gone on, he's father of two and doing all his stuff, but he's still so entranced by movement. And I think that affected me early on in my climbing. Like, wow, this is really cool, even if it's in this little dirty cave, or even if it's on like a 12 by 12 or 10 by 7 board or something like that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for turning things that felt impossible into maybe not easy, but just that connection and coordination you feel, which I think boards often help us realize that, this full body coordination, like let's say you only have one foot and you need to really get on that foot and jump. And so some people look at that and think like, okay, you just need to yard and jump off that foot. But often what it is it requires you to be even more subtly using your off foot, like as a smear. And it's like a slippery board. But no, it actually makes it even more important to not overpower and to find that coordination. Yeah, I love it.
100%. That is a amazing, like very real example for climbers to go after they listen to this, they go boarding. Like, think about that. If there's one foot, right? Your initial like flow chart is like, do I backstep it or do I square up? And I didn't know how to pogo till I started climbing on a board. I really truly didn't. And that, I think pogo is like almost like too broad of a word, where it's like that coordinated pendulum of your foot. That's not always necessarily like a gigantic pogo, but it could be that coordinated. Are you going to square up to it, or are you going to backstep it, putting more emphasis on other parts of your body? And then, like you said, let's say you're backstepping left foot, so your left hip is in the wall. What's your right foot doing? How high is it? Where is it? If you had to like have a video and you could superimpose it like Monday Night Football or something where they're drawing on it, like what degree is that foot, and how does that matter to your swing? That stuff is cool, and that stuff really matters, especially if you film yourself and you see it like, oh no, my just off foot needs to be higher. For whatever reason, it just helps me catch a little bit more.
Good stuff. I just want to link it back to Shosha Loza and thinking about that. a big move to the Gaston jug. Like as you learn more about what that dynamic movement requires, it's not unbelievable jug. It depends on when you climbed it because it breaks throughout the years. Let's say it's a good hold. And you'll see people think about big movement as like just getting there and latching it. But what you actually find is that a lot of dynamic movement requires you to really get that arc right and that coordination so you can jump even higher. And instead of hitting it with that like arm outstretched, shoulder up by your ear, you're a little higher with your shoulder kind of down. And that completely changes the move. And all of a sudden you go, oh, actually, I feel really strong in that position. It doesn't feel like my shoulder's ripping out of its socket. It feels good. And yeah, all those subtleties, very important.
Yeah, I think extended like long-term board climbing, it makes your window bigger. Like for your shoulder, it makes that you can grab it here, 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 or here, versus if without board climbing or if you don't do a lot of that movement, I think like, oh, I have to hit it in this really nice Goldilocks spot. You can kind of make your window bigger. There's also a cool part of that climb, Shosholoza, that mimics board climbing where it's got the extended hand foot match. I mean, how many hand foot matches are you doing on a board? It's all of them, it seems, right? And getting that core, that ability to drive. We talked about these guys that are good at small box setting. A lot of it really is, okay, I'm going to take this little nugget from I'm thinking of Project 2, that first thing you go to, it's like that little nugget, and I'm going to twist it or I'm going to grab it in a different way so I can get just a little bit more slack and then put my foot all the way up there. And that's cool. That's a skill. That's a skill the same way as heel hooking and toe hooking is a skill that, will fall off if you do a bunch of board climbing. I can attest to it. Like, if that's something that's important to you, keep up with it on commercial sets or outside because you'll lose a lot of that. But your little talon toe, or whatever that move you want to call, where you can really rock over your toe and kind of dig in, is going to go through the roof.
By the way, be careful on that little nugget on Shosholoza. I had a buddy like fillet his finger on that crimp. Maybe go to it later on in the trip. You can completely lose all skin. So yes, board climbing gives you skills and maybe it not takes away other skills, but it leads you to maybe not do as much toe hooking. Although I will tell you, as I just want to contradict myself immediately, I've noticed that board climbing has brought me into doing more bicycling on small little holds. It's something that this probably dates myself. And I mean, look, people have been bicycling, toe hooking, heel hooking forever, but it's especially bicycling has come more into the world of climbing, I would argue, in the last, 10 years, we'll just say. And I find that I do kind of, especially for those tricky matches at the end, and you bike almost like, a 1-inch hold, you get some squeeze. But, we're seeing more board climbing gyms. We're seeing just, you talked about you're maybe known as a moon boarder, but I know that you climb on all the boards. And what would you love to see in a board climbing gym that we're starting to see enter the kind of possible climbing sphere of gyms?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I think back to when I started climbing in Chicago, it was like I was coming from the Midwest and moved to Chicago. I had played like team sports, ran track, did all that stuff in high school. And I was like, well, I want to stay fit. I love to, I love to move, all that stuff. Like, I'm sure there was a transition point from you to gymnastics, right? Where, hey, this is really cool. And everything clicks. A lot of people have a very similar story. Everything clicks, the problem solving, the workout, all that stuff. But I'm thinking back and I'm wondering if it's not so new. It's not so new of a concept to have full board gyms or spray walls or something like that, because I touched on it a little bit in Chicago that we got so much value out of that. We got so much value out of just like a spray wall and just having fun and getting after it and doing it. Now the boards make that, they take it to the next step with the LEDs. They can kind of guide you. You can have the community aspect. You can see what your friends thought about it. You can have your own little friend group challenges or whatever you want. I think that's a huge part of not only this, we're talking a lot about like way down the line, climbing 20 years, climbing 30 years, like having all this, like we're trying, boulders at our limit and stuff, but it's a huge factor for people just getting into climbing. They want to be with their friends and do cool moves and stuff. So I can 100% see, I think maybe commercial gyms or like the thought of we have to have this huge gym and all these sets and all this stuff. And I don't know if that is like the only blueprint for having a gym or having a climbing facility is you have to have all these big, shiny, cool walls. And then here's the spot where we're going to do birthday parties. And here's the spot where we're going to do lead climbing. And we're just going to cater to absolutely everything. There's value to that, sure. But it seems like there's like a spot in the climbing world where you can have a really hardcore group of climbers that you're not even going to have to, you're just going to open and yes, they're going to come, of course. Maybe it's proximity based. If another gym's closer to their work or their whatever, it's like they're going to go to that one, but they'll probably go to yours. But there's a big space for it, I think, for newer climbers. I think a lot of it really depends on, are they like making connections early in climbing? Are they connecting with the movement? And then are they like feeling like they're part of something on that spray wall or something on the board or something going on, right? Like, and it kind of goes back to just like the learning curve of knowing how to use it, but there's a learning curve of how tight your shoes are when you start climbing, right? So that's kind of what I see lacking in like the climbing gym space. I'm thinking of Vegas, but you know, talking with friends across the country, you see it. I think Seattle just opened like a board only gym. I'd be curious to see how many of their user base is like new versus how many is, hardcore climbers like I would describe you and I, right? I'd be curious. I think there is a space for it because I liked that early on, just my own personal experience.
You actually wonder if the attraction isn't just the boards, but the requisite focal point that a crew coalesces around. So I remember I spent a lot of time climbing in San Francisco, and we had this gym. It was Planet Granite back then. Now it's Movement. And the way that gyms kind of work, and even when we break it up into setting, is it's like, this is the red wall, and it occupies kind of this area that people climb on. It sounds ridiculous, but what I mean is that we already kind of visually chunk up the space into these areas that then we coalesce around and climb together on. And even if we're not climbing on the same boulders, we're sitting next to each other in front of this wall in front of us, just like if we were in Waco or something. We're all climbing here on like what's the one with like Dragonfly and Full Service? I'm blanking on the name of that boulder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good one.
Yeah.
And so then Dogpatch boulders came around, and it is massive. I mean, massive. Massive is, I say it 3 times because it really is that massive. I would remember sometimes going in, sessioning, and then as I'm leaving, I bump into a buddy I wanted to session with, but we didn't even see each other because it was so big. And, you can make the argument that that's cool, but I think that there's something about that experience you had in front of a spray wall where you all kind of climbed together. And I wonder if boards, it's not just the climbing, the physical experiences. There may be a factor of just it being a center focal point and bringing people together. Because like we were saying, that's a big part of climbing is the crew,
Yeah, exactly. And, I feel like as corny as it might sound is like a lot of times I climb solo. So it's like my crew can feel like it's everywhere with the boards, right? You can feel connected or, you chat with people or you maybe trade like, oh, how'd you do this? Or how'd you do that one? What shoes did you use or whatever? So you can have those interactions now, and you can also have your in-person crew, right? So I think it's just in an exciting place. And I think there's some room to shift, like for the people that are opening gyms or the money people behind it. It's like, there's a spot, there's more, maybe in a similarity to like these specialized, just regular gym, just like generic gyms or like this one specializes on this, or we do this here, or we do that here. Like that I don't see in climbing as much yet, but I think there's a spot for it.
Well, if you had a beautiful board gym in your hometown, you would definitely have, I'll just say the big 3 boards, which I always think of as the moon board, the TB2, and the kilter board. I know that you're best known for your moonboard exploits, but tell me a little bit about what you like about the different boards and kind of how they occupy, again, training. I don't know, your climbing life.
Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, like an ideal board gym is exactly like you said, just to be over the top because we're just, hey, it's pie in the sky stuff. I'd have probably two moon boards with like rotating sets, like, hey, we're going to do 2016. I'm planning on switching back to the 2016 next year because it's like the 10-year anniversary. So I want to like swap back to it. I think that'd be fun. But, maybe you have 2016, 2019, or maybe you have 2019, 2024, or whatever. But to answer your question more directly about like the other boards, a lot of it's based on like time, temperature stuff here. I'm climbing other boards because my garage, like even with a mini split, is like brutally, hellishly hot all the time. I get afternoon sun on my garage door, and it's not even viable right now. So what I'm really enjoying is climbing at different angles. It's really giving me this throwback feel to all the time I spent in Waco climbing roofs and stuff like that. I'm loving the kilter at 5560. I think it's awesome. I think there's a lot more of those bicycles you were talking about, or those really extended core movements where you have to just walk. You can't cut. You're walking stuff over. It's real tenuous, cool pinches, lots of like full body. I think that is like the sweet spot for that board in my mind is like 50 to 60. I'm loving the symmetry on the TB2. I love everything that's kind of going on with the TB2 right now, like board lord stuff. I'm liking I like the classics. I like the mirroring. That to me feels like it was made to be 45. I love 45 on the TB2. It just feels awesome and cool and badass. I think if I had to pick one angle, it's probably got to be 45. Like if I wanted like my ideal board gym, if we're building it, there's a spray wall that's at 45. So that's been fun. I like it at 52. It's given me a lot of different like excitement and movement, and I'm almost taking what I said earlier, where if I'm getting stuck on certain things, taking a step back, leaving it in my list of projects to do, like my to-do list, leaving it there, but then supplementing with these other sessions that are giving me, more core, shoulders, you can work fingers on TB2 and like kind of mirror things like that. I like to try to do little challenges. So if I'm dragging on motivation, it's like, I want to do a bunch of eights, but I want to do them flipped. I want to do this and the mirror. I want to do this and the mirror. I want to do this and the mirror. Like do it, do it, do it. And then it becomes this cool experiment. Or why did the mirror feel easier? Why did it feel harder? Why did I do the beta differently? I do the beta differently so often. And I don't know
Huh.
what that is. I don't know if you like relate at all, but when I do the mirror, it's almost always different than when I do the regular or vice versa. I don't know what it is.
That's actually kind of surprising. I gotta say, I don't typically climb both sides of the mirror. Sometimes I do on the easier grades for me, but I've got some injuries, or I don't know if they're even injuries. I've got some aches and pains and things I'm gentle on. And I often use the mirror to avoid them. I go, oh, like I really struggle with undercleaning on my left wrist now. And so anytime I see that move, I just do the other mirror. So I can think of a bunch of benefits from mirroring. But for me, that's actually how I use it instead of as a tool to find out. I'm like, what's the easiest, safest way for me to do this problem? And I do it like that and move on. But because I'm just trying to I want to complete all the ones in one mirror, and maybe I'll go back and try it on the other side.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. I think they did a great job graphically with the double check. It's like cool to see your little X of swords or whatever. But no, I do the same. I'm like way overbalanced. Like my left shoulder feels way stronger than my right right now. It's just like some kind of like neck stuff. It is what it is. Everybody's got a little something they're working through. But I do like to still try it. And then what I'll do maybe is like, let's say I do the left on the left shoulder version. I'll mirror it and then try it, and then maybe just try the shoulder move in isolation, or just see like how it feels. So, but yeah, I typically always try both. And then if it's something that's way at my limit, if it's something that's really going to be hard for me, I'll try both and feel like, okay, I think I have a better shot of doing horse's break when it goes to the left
Mm.
versus the right, or something like that.
Ooh, that's a good one, by the way.
That is a good one.
Really good one.
Yeah.
You know, I just started doing, this is like obvious. This is just entry level boarding 101, is that when I get shut down on a particular move, I've started kicking it way back and then I do both sides. So I really struggle with very far out Gastones. I'm thinking of this V10 called By the Sword, I think it's called.
Yeah. That one's hard.
Really hard. So then I kicked it back very far and then I started doing them on both sides because, you know, the much toned down version. And it was something fun about really finding a move that said bad things to me and then owning it, you know, on both sides and getting just that intuition for how that move feels when you really can do well at it. I know that's like board 101, but I don't know. I get focused on that completionism and I just am like, I'm going to do this climb. This is how it was set. And, you know, I just, yeah, it's fun to play with those adjustable boards. I feel like I'm just a newbie at that still.
Yeah, I mean, climbing like on a fixed angle for so long, I sometimes forget too. So I'll forget to like, oh yeah, I could kick this back and do fragmentation at this versus this or whatever it is, you know, and just kind of start to dial in what makes that different. Oh, I have to have like more shoulder engagement, or oh, I'm like crappy with my feet because I'm just kicking them around at 40, but at 50 I can't do it. I have to like really be intentional and walk it through. And like learning that, it just adds another dimension to your tool set and what you're honing.
Yeah, how do you match that last bar on fragmentation? I can't do that last move.
Man,
It really bothers me.
I've only done it at 40. I've like kind of heartbreakered on the match on. I think it's a classic at 45, right?
Yeah, I think 45. It's like, and it's so good. Just putting it out there. I want to say it's a
it's
tension
amazing.
boulder. So good. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's got a bunch of cool stuff. It's got bicycles. It's got like all these kind of like drop knee tension moves in it. But I think I'm like kicking way out, and it almost feels a little bit aired out, which is goofy to say for a boulder. But it feels like you're kind of laying your ass out on the line when you like grab that bar and really do a deep back flag because your right foot's on that
Big ball. Yeah.
You have to kick it out on like the crystal ball and then like kick like way under, like deeper flag than you think. And then this match is just, I always like, I'll wiggle, you know, on it. I had to go like, and then it like, and then I can match it. So
there's something really fun about how you get so familiar with each hold, and you have holds that you struggle on, that you feel like they kind of, you know, like I struggle with that bar, and there's a few climbs that use it, and I love being forced into use it. It's that completionism aspect again. So yeah, I'm just going to shout out. I know we're like way off in territory of specific climbs that people don't know, but I'm just going to let you know that Harlequin emoji on maybe like 50 degrees, banger. So I just want to put that out there for the whole world, but also for you. I think you'll enjoy it.
you know what? I'm going to have to end up looking, but I think I've done it. Did Rosado said it?
He did.
Is
yeah.
that his? Yeah. I think we had
so
a combo about it, you know, because it was kind of early in my like tension side quests, and I had it kicked back. I was really enjoying it, and I was like, "This is really cool." I think I've done it, but I don't. Is it a classic at 50?
I think at 50, like an 11 or something, and it's got that big sloper, and you just recycle things a lot, and it's so steep that you put your foot like over your head for. It's just exciting. I still haven't done it, and it makes me angry, but I enjoy getting to climb on it. So just wanted to put that out there for a recommendation.
Yes, I have done this. It's at 55. It's
55. There you go.
That is an awesome one. Yes, that is one of my faves.
Okay, well, I got super specific on recommending you a climb, and before I let you go, I know you had a reading tick list in South Africa, and just wanted to give you a chance to recommend to me or the world any super good book that you had on the trip, since that sounded like the focus instead of
I know. I ended up taking a bunch. It was funny because I was, I'm like looking at what to pack, and I'm like, which ones am I going to be able to do, and this and that. So I ended up reading a translation of the Iliad that I loved, Robert Fagel's translation of the Iliad, and it's incredible. It's got all this momentum, all this imagery. It's just great. I mean, oh, hey, I'm recommending the Iliad. Yeah, it's the greatest war, poem ever written, right? But yeah, that was fantastic, and it was really cool to read, way out there. The one I would recommend, probably even above that, is Barbarian Days, surfing memoir by this guy William Finnegan. Awesome. There's a ton of stuff that you can relate to climbing, and it's really cool to read on a road trip. I would highly recommend reading it while you're like traveling, while you're doing your stuff. There's a ton that climbers can get out of it. I've never surfed. I never lived near water. I don't have like that, but I really connected with it. He's like a first ascensionist of waves. Essentially, he's like goes to all these places, surfs all these big waves first in the 60s and 70s, and it's just 400 pages of beautifully written like love letter to surfing, and you can really see a lot of parallels and a lot of contrast between what we do and what we're obsessed with, and his passion and his like drive to surf and surf and surf. He surfs he lives in San Francisco. He like surfs in San Francisco in the winter. Like he's crazy. He's super dedicated, and there's a ton of stuff to love. It really made me wish that someone would write a climbing book like that. It's so beautifully, perfectly written. It really encapsulates the love and the drive and the obsession of a niche sport like we do.
Dude, those are some classics, like on both ends of the spectrum of like modern sports stuff and like ultimate Western canon. I love climbing. I'm a climber. I actually often say that I would have been totally okay with being a skier or a surfer. I honestly, in some ways, any sport is beautiful, but there's always something about that nature making your playground instead of us carving it out, where it's like a football field is 100 yards because we said so. And there's something about intermixing your experience with nature and the way it's formed, and you just notice these little things that you feel like, gosh, was this put here just for me as a climber? And that's always fun. And so I like that you can read something about a different sport and feel that connection, even if they're not talking about crimps. That's cool.
Yeah, and exactly what you described, you'll get that feeling. Just him describing the setting, the surrounding, the people he met along the way. And there is a really funny little bit about how surfers sandbag each other, and they never really say how big the waves are. They're always sandbagging them. I'm like, oh, that's relatable. Climbers just downgrading you know what I mean? It's like, give something enough time, it'll just get downgraded. Oh, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. And you see the same thing with the waves. Like, how high were those waves? They're like 15-foot waves. Like, I don't know, 4 to 6 feet. They're just brutal with each other. And it's almost like a faux pas, it sounds like, to ask how big the wave was you just caught. Like, you're not even supposed to think about that. And I'm like, wow, that's relatable to climbing.
That is so climbing. I don't know. It's not too bad. You'll be fine. You got this. You're good.
You're good.
And you just have done it. You like almost died. But there is something about that where you can't encapsulate what that experience is really like. And you're almost like, go have an adventure. Go for it. I don't know. It's a good one, because that's what you end up saying is like, instead of talking about the difficulty or whatever, it's kind of like, go have that adventure. It'll be fun. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, what they were, they call the hardcore dudes, or back then they call them gnarly dudes, that just are out there and they're just ripping waves and no one's heard of them. And you're like, oh, that's cool. That's great. It's very relatable, very beautiful book. I would highly recommend it.
Okay. Well, I also got to point out that you're wearing an Ozzy Osbourne tank top.
R.I.P. I'm sad.
Yeah. I know that you have a love of metal. I want to say he's known as the king of metal. Am I right on that?
Yeah, the Prince of Darkness.
The Prince of Darkness. That's right, dude. Yeah. I guess that gives people a little hint when this was recorded, but I was just listening to, I don't know, I was on a YouTube rabbit hole and I was listening to this woman who's a voice coach, and she'll listen to songs, often live songs, and then critique their voices. And she was listening to Ozzy do must be paranoid, and he was performing it live. And she pointed out his style of, he doesn't sing. He almost sounds like he's talking. It's not, he doesn't have these crazy belting out highs and lows. And she was like, make no mistake, that is very difficult. And this is a style, and this is him. And it's incredible what he does. And I don't know, it just came to mind when I saw your tank top, my little YouTube rabbit hole I went down.
Yeah, it's been sad. A friend of mine went to see that last show, Back to the Beginning, in London.
Wow. In London. Okay.
In the, or I forget where the actual venue was, but in the UK. And so he goes out there. We're texting. I'm trying to live vicariously through him and stuff. I'm like, he ended up bringing me back a little tote bag with some merch and stuff. And I was like, oh man, I've been listening to so much, watching the performances and listening to so much Sabbath and Ozzy, and it's cool. It's poetic. It's sad that we lost him. He's responsible for so many bands, right? I mean, so much influence, and so early on. That voice, I just think of like on their self-titled debut. I just think of like that atmosphere, and everything is hitting, like the atmosphere, the opening, the voice, the lyrics, like just having that ambient darkness, doom metal, rock. Like it's just so good. And it's been kind of cool to see everybody posting and all the photos popping up. Just, yeah, it's great. I mean, he's one of the greats all time.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to get a chance to shout him out. And it's something that you've just weaved into your pseudonymous climber fame of metal. My picture of you here when I got my merch from you is in black and white. You're always posting, new vinyl. It's fun to like see how somehow this is deeply ingrained in yourself, and you brought it into our culture, and you somehow imbued our board culture with that, which is a trip, man. I don't know. Like, it seems appropriate to talk about that on this podcast, which is cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think like I talked about it earlier, but like the coolest part right now is like to have these combos with people all over the world about board climbing, or about their journey, or about what they did, what got them there. Hey, I tried this for a year. I came off this. I did whatever. I'm also now starting to have these cool combos about books and about records and music, and like finding other metalheads. And I get the pigeonhole, but I'm a big music guy. I like to listen to all kinds of stuff, but it is fun to specifically dig down like into like really extreme metal and have those combos. There's a bunch of people out there that are really into it. Will and I have had like a renewed combos about, he started to pick up some vinyl and stuff, and we're sending each other little things. And what I really love is if I know like, Will's into more progressive stuff or melodic or whatever, I'm like, okay, cool. What can I send him that I've listened to recently that would kind of jive with what he's into? And that's fun for me. Same way you would recommend a problem like, hey, I think you'd be really good at this, or I think this would suit you. I think that's cool. That's like, I'm finding a lot of value in that.
I love just diving deep into it all. Like, if you have love for one thing, have love for all sorts of different avenues to express yourself in. And it's cool that you're able to bring them all together into this Ravioli Biceps. It's a trip, man. Okay. Well, before I let you go, I gotta ask you my classic question, and that's, Ravioli Biceps. How do you go from good to great?
Okay. If you're listening to this, we probably already have the umbrella of you're obsessed, you're in it. You want to learn and consume, and you have that curiosity. Great. We're using that as a baseline for everyone that's listening that wants to go from good to great. What I would say to add into that, no matter where you're at in your climbing journey, is to add patience, consistency, and ability to listen to yourself. Listen to yourself actively. And I don't mean this to sound callous, but no one cares about you except you. That's it. So just listen to yourself and what you're motivated on. I kind of talked about it earlier. We talked about it really early. You hit on it where you were saying, let the journey take you where you want to be, explore all these other things. I would add, and I would say, there's a book I read earlier that has this good analogy, or this kind of good extended metaphor of staying on the bus. Stay on the bus. So if you start at the bus station, you go a few stops, in your climbing. Each stop is like something in your climbing. And you say, oh, well, I'm not really liking, sport climbing. So I'm going to get off the bus on this sport climbing and I'm going to go back to the bus station and I'm going to go on a different bus and the different bus is bouldering. I don't really like bouldering. I think maybe I'm trying to make myself or, do this and that. I don't really like bouldering. I'm going to go back and I'm going to go get on the trad climbing bus because I listened to a trad climbing podcast or whatever, or watched a cool video. And you're going to go get on that bus. What I would say is that stay on the first one, stay on the second one, stay on the third one, whatever one it is, it's going to take you to some pretty cool and interesting places. And you wouldn't know that if you keep going off and keep trying to follow in someone else's footsteps so long. I think that's a really important part of climbing. You need to learn, you need to imitate, it's the same way kids learn to talk, all that stuff. You need to like look up to and imitate people to a certain extent, but just stay on that path and just really be real with yourself on where it takes you. Like for me, it took me to board climbing. I never would have thought that, right? Dig into it. If it's exciting, if it motivates you, there's value in it to you. So that would be my 2 cents.
That's really good, man. Made me think of a couple things where sometimes people want to find like the perfect training thing or the perfect whatever. They're on the hunt for what's perfect. And I always encourage people to find what they love, because if they do it and they stick to it, that's way better than some training program that's 5% better. But like if you love doing a certain hangboard move or whatever, maybe it's not the best one. I don't know. But like if you're going to do it, at least you're doing it, I feel like there's something deep there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really hope that, people listening get some good value in hearing us nerd out.
we went deep there. There was definitely
good.
When we started really getting into specific board climbs and the holds and the moves, I think that's another thing I've learned as I've gotten older, is that sometimes you think that you're on some crazy track that no one else would be on and you're going to be alone. Like, dude, actually moving I live in Reno, and I thought, what am I doing? Like a lot of my crew moved up to Truckee, but it just wasn't for me living in the snow. And so I moved to Reno. I thought, boy, like who am I going to meet there? I'm not like anyone in Reno. And then sure enough, it's like, I met tons of people in Reno who were just like me and loved the exact same things I did. And that's why they ended up in Reno. And the idea is if you just kind of trust in what you love and who you are, you probably will find where you're supposed to go. But that's that listening to yourself, like you were saying.
Yeah, I would say it's awesome. I got to get up to Reno. I got to come see you. It'll be fun.
You can borrow a pad. No, just
there we go. No,
not only can you borrow a
Vegas,
pad, we will hang. I will show you some of the great boulders here. Although some of those squeezers you talked about, those big 3 in black velvet are incredible. And as much as I love the Tahoe granite, I feel like there's a big boy squeezer style in Red Rocks that's hard to beat. And I don't know if people realize that black velvet big 3 that you talked about was one of the biggest draws for Red Rocks. And now right next to those are Sleepwalker, Squoze, some of the most iconic climbs that are now entering our climbing world. But just so people know, 10, 15 years ago, that was already the spot to test yourself, which is kind of fun to see it have a revival like that.
Oh, absolutely. I have one short story. I apologize. But I got to get this out there. Speaking of how it's had this resurgence, and I tell people about Vegas, I'm like, it's been great, through the Pete Lowe era and all that stuff. But I was at Wettering and Dave Graham was there and he was walking around. He was trying some stuff. And I'd walked by Sleepwalker hundreds of times. And he walks by, he looks at it, some chalk real quick, this and that, he's looking at it. He goes, this is 2014, I think it was 2013, winter of like 2013. And he's like touching it. And he's like, this is the next 8C in America. And then just walks away. Dude, it was unreal. I'm like, there's enough stories about Dave Graham out there, but I got to put one more because that was just true wizardry in motion. It was unreal. And it's great that it came to fruition in a big way.
That was literally what I was going to say. I was just going to say the wizard. He's the wizard. I'm surprised that must be on your radar, because I think of that as being, I don't know, a bit of a, maybe not a big boy problem exactly, but it's there. It must be calling to you a little bit.
Yeah, that one and squats for sure. I want to dig in and I want to try them and get after it. I think that'd be amazing.
All right, I'll come out and join you on that. I still got some of the
Yes.
big three to put down, and those are worth the trip also. What a great spot. What a great place to live, man. I know it gets hot in there in the summer, but boy, is there climbing, and you guys have an amazing community out there too.
Yeah, no, thanks. It is. It's awesome. Come by. We'll hang out, dude.
All right. Well, I'll do that. Maybe next time we'll do one in person. And that was a blast. And thanks again for everything you've done for the board climbing community. The board acceptance probably started with you, the quote unquote board acceptance. And you were a big part of my journey too. And really fun to get to chat with you, man.
Yeah, no, likewise. This was awesome. Like, you have amazing insights and it was just really great to talk. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, man. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.